And here in the Utah desert, there's a wild species that's showing us just how dynamic plants are when it comes to self-defense. It's called Nicotiana attenuata, the wild tobacco plant. For more than a decade, Ian Baldwin has been studying the wild tobacco and the amazing ways it responds to threats in its environment.
This plant's genome has probably an order of magnitude more genes involved in environmental perception than most animals do. Most plants have to, because they sit still and they have to really tune their physiology and biochemistry to what's going on. And they need a very sophisticated system of perception and response.
And being able to respond quickly is essential for wild tobacco, because its seeds need wildfire to kickstart their growth. And they can wait for hundreds of years for that to happen. So when they finally do emerge, they may face enemies they've never seen before.
It has no idea what it's going to face when it germinates out of that seed bank and has to cope with whatever's there. There are all these other organisms that reign in on this habitat that's just been cleared out by a fire. Just about every part of the plant is attacked in a different way by a specialist that feeds on that particular part. It's a very complex problem they've got to solve.
And it's not just one problem. This plant's enemies are as plentiful as desert sunlight. But it turns out that the wild tobacco has a secret chemical weapon to deploy. As soon as an herbivore attacks, it ramps up a toxin, one that some of us are all too familiar with.
It's evolved a toxin that will poison any organism that has a muscle. And that is this molecule called nicotine, the one that human beings have such a relationship with. So anything that moves and wants to eat this plant is going to be poisoned by this thing.
But while its nicotine cocktail poisons some bugs, it has absolutely no impact on this one. In fact, the hornworm caterpillar can mow down a tobacco plant in a matter of days. But this cunning little plant has a few more defensive tricks up its leaves. Once the caterpillar starts feeding, the plant's leaves release an SOS, chemical messages that drift up into the air, where they're picked up by the enemies of their enemies. Predators that just love feasting on caterpillars.
You've seen several geocharists in this area, right?
And if you find it hard to believe that plants can call in insect mercenaries, Baldwin has proof. In one experiment, he captured the chemical signals released by the leaves of plants that were under attack. Then he glued caterpillar eggs onto a leaf, smeared them with the chemical scent, and waited to see if anyone would show up. Within a matter of hours, this insect has responded to the plant's call for help. It's called the big-eyed bug, a pint-sized predator that devours eggs and larvae alike. In fact, it's even been known to take a bite out of a full-size caterpillar. But wait a minute. How does the plant even know who's attacking it, let alone which predator to call in? Well, the answer lies in yet another chemical message. This one delivered by the caterpillar itself.
When the caterpillar chews on a plant, it has to have saliva in its mouth. And in that saliva, there are these various compounds that provide information to the plant, and the plant uses those compounds to say, it is the hawk moth and not a negro bug that's feeding on me. And so it adjusts and tunes its responses to that particular herbivore.
And Baldwin has discovered that this plant has another secret weapon, specifically designed to rid itself of caterpillars. This is a trichome, a sweet little treat deposited by the plant and irresistible to caterpillars. Beautiful, yes, but it's as lethal as a landmine. When this little guy chows down on a trichome, it gets a very bad case of body odor.
20 minutes after eating a trichome, they're smelling. So what we've learned from these particular smells is that they inform predators, particularly ground foraging predators. The plant is offering this nice little sugary first meal for the caterpillars, but it's an evil lollipop because the caterpillar gets tagged for predation. It's the razor blade in the apple at Halloween time. Plants, after all, can't run away, so they have to do this. They have to be able to solve their environmental problems by changing the organism that they are.
And being able to change who they are is critical to the tobacco plant's survival. Because it turns out that the mother of these voracious caterpillars is also the plant's best friend. Its main pollinator, the hawk moth. Tonight, Baldwin is in the field trying to lure the moth in through the irresistible draw of light. Wild tobacco flowers bloom at dusk, the perfect draw for a nocturnal pollinator like the hawk moth. As the moth sips nectar, it gathers pollen, spreading it from one plant to the next. But while the moth happily does the plant's sexual bidding, it has its own reproductive agenda. A single moth can lay as many as 200 eggs, eggs that grow into plant-munching caterpillars. So sometimes, despite its best defenses, the wild tobacco can still get infested with caterpillars. Even then, the plant has another card to play. It simply switches pollinators. Baldwin's colleague Danny Kessler was the first to observe this astonishing behavior.